Hello, welcome back to part 2 of our elasticity lecture. In the first part, we covered price elasticity of demand. We went over the formulas, how to calculate it, and the general definitions. In this second chunk, we're going to be looking at how elasticity of demand affects revenues. We're going to look at elasticity of supply, income elasticity, and cross-price elasticity. So when we're talking about total revenue or total expenditure, this is the total amount of money that people are spending on a particular product. And we calculate that by looking at price times quantity. And so price times quantity equals total revenue. Now, total revenue is different from profit. So you can have a high total revenue and still negative profit. We will definitely get into all of that in another section. But right here, what we're looking at is how that total expenditure, how much money customers are spending, is impacted by the elasticity of demand. So there is an optimal price for maximizing profit. You might think that, oh, companies should just charge more and more and more. The higher prices are going to give them more profit or higher revenue. And that honestly, that's actually not always the case. There is going to be some kind of optimal, some kind of maximum. When we're looking at total revenue and price, we see sort of this dome-shaped function where if you have a zero price, you're going to have zero revenue. And at some point when prices are too high, you're also going to have zero revenue because nobody's going to buy anything. And then there's going to be some other point, some optimal point, that's going to give you the most possible revenue. And later on, we'll get into maximizing profit, which can actually be a different point than revenue. We're just going to keep it a little simpler here. When we're talking about elasticity, if we have elastic demand, where customers are sensitive to prices, you're going to be somewhere over here, where actually lowering the price is going to increase total revenue. And this is because that price change is going to be smaller than that percent in quantity change. And so if you lower the prices, you're actually going to get more customers. It's going to increase that total revenue. And if we have inelastic demand, you're going to be over here somewhere where you can actually increase prices to increase total revenue. So depending on what part of that function you're at, how your customers feel, how big of a part of their budget it is, time sensitive, all that stuff, wherever you sort of fall on this range, if you're inelastic, customers are inelastic, raise prices, you can make more money. If you have elastic demand sensitive customers, you actually might want to lower your prices to make more money. There's a worksheet that is posted in Canvas that will give you a chance to practice this. So you'll have one section where you're calculating elasticity. You're going to see if it's elastic or inelastic. And then in the next section, you'll actually calculate total revenue, and you'll see how this matches up with that. So just remember, it's also the opposite. So if customers are elastic, dropping prices increases revenue, and raising prices decreases revenue. And when your customers are inelastic, dropping prices drops total revenue, and raising prices raises total revenue. Okay, so the revenue and price move in the same direction for inelastic and opposite directions for elastic. If it's unit elastic, there's going to be no change. So 10% change in price, 10% change in quantity, and it sort of like evens out, right? One went up 10%, one went down 10%, you're going to get that same total revenue. Okay, so we want to find that optimal point. Usually businesses don't have these lovely graphs here, so they have to kind of test it out. What happens if we raise prices a little bit, lower prices a little bit? They look at other things happening in their area. They do different surveys and maybe test small things. Even if you look at like Disneyland, they have Fast Pass where you have to pay for it now. It used to be free, but they didn't just go from free to $30 or $50 or, whatever it is when you're listening to this. They sort of tested it out first with, hey, if you pay $10, you can access Fast Pass through your app. You don't have to go get a physical Fast Pass. And they did little things to kind of try to test that demand, see what people were willing to pay, adjusted prices a little bit before they like fully launched into it. So even, a large company that makes tons of money and raises prices all the time, they still do different things to test prices, test elasticity, and in a later chapter, we'll even get into price discrimination, where they try to capture different parts of the market. We also have income and cross-price elasticity. Now, both of these are related to demand. These impact the demand function. So we're still going to have percentage change in quantity demanded on the top. But on the bottom, if we're talking about income elasticity, we're going to have the percentage change in income. And if we're talking about cross-price elasticity, we're going to have the percentage change of price of a related good. So let's look at how this works. Okay, so if we're talking about income, if we have a normal good, we're going to get a positive income elasticity. And if we have an inferior good, we're going to get a negative income elasticity. So this is a little bit different than before, where we ignored the negative. Now we can get either a positive or a negative value, and it's going to tell us something about the type of good. Okay, so positive and negative tell us about the type of good. It still doesn't make a difference for how sensitive consumers are. So -3 is just as sensitive as +3, or -0.5 is just as insensitive as +0.5. So this absolute value number tells us like the magnitude of that change, and then the positive and negative just tells us what type of good it is. I'm going to explain to you why positive and negative has that impact. So, okay, let's say we are talking about burgers. And we've got our demand for burgers. And we see that in this market, when income increases, the demand for burgers increases. Okay, so we would say this is a normal good because when income went up, the demand also went up. And if we're calculating elasticity, what we would see here is we would have our old quantity and our new quantity. Okay, so this is going to be increased, it's going to be a positive number. And when we're looking at our income, it went up, so it's also going to be a positive number. Okay, and so you're going to get a positive value that tells us it's a normal good. Or the opposite is true. So if people's incomes go down, they're going to buy less burgers. So let's say our old quantities here, new quantities here, we get a negative number. And income went down, so negative divided by negative is positive. So if you're calculating income elasticity and you get a positive number, it tells you that it's a normal good. And inferior goods, we're going to get a negative number. So let's take the case of like Top Ramen. It's like 25 cents a pack. And consumer income increases. And this decreases the demand for ramen. So when we look at that quantity demanded, it's decreasing. Okay, so we get a negative number on top. And this happened after a positive increase in income. Okay, so negative divided by positive gives us a negative number. Or the opposite happens. We've got a recession, and now people's incomes are dropping, and this is increasing the demand for cheap ramen. Okay, so old value here, new value has increased. So we get positive on the top, and that was as a result of a decrease in income. So positive divided by negative is negative. So if you're calculating income elasticity and you get a positive number, it's normal. Negative number, it is inferior. If you're calculating just elasticity of demand, you'll always get a negative number. It means nothing. Or elasticity of supply is always positive. It means nothing. So it's only when we're doing income or cross-price elasticity that it means something. And then same thing with cross-price elasticity. So we're going to calculate it the same way, percentage change in quantity divided by a percentage change in price. The only difference is that percentage change in price is going to be for a different good. So let's say we're talking about the market for burgers and fries. And we want to know when the price of fries changes, what happens in the market for burgers. So we would say the percentage change in quantity of burgers divided by the percentage change price of fries. So we have the quantity of one good on one side and the price on the other side. If we get a positive number when we calculate this, it tells us that our goods are substitutes. And if we get a negative number, it tells us that these goods are complements. Okay, and let me show you why. So let's say we're talking about the market for burgers. And we see that we have an increase in the price of fries. As a result, this causes the demand for burgers to decrease. So our percentage change in quantity of burgers is going to be negative because it's a decrease, right? Old value to new value, it's dropping. And the price of fries went up, so we're going to get a positive value on the bottom, and this is going to give us a negative number. And the opposite is also true. So let's say price of fries is decreasing. This is going to increase the demand for burgers. We're going to get a positive number on the top because we have an increase in the quantity of burgers. And we have a negative on the bottom because the price of fries is decreasing. And that's going to give us a negative and tell us that these two things are complements. Now you could get -3 or -0.75 or -18, -0.1. Okay, so the negative tells you that they're complements, and then the other number tells you how big of the response it was. So if you get -3, that means that quantity changed 3 times more than price. Or if you get 0.1, it means that quantity changed like 1/10 as much as that percentage change in price. So you can have inelastic complements or elastic complements, inelastic substitutes, elastic substitutes. So the positive and negative tell you what type of good it is, and then the actual number tells you how big of a response it is. And we could do this too if we, let me show you substitutes. So let's say instead of burgers, you might eat pizza instead. So we've got our demand for burgers and our demand for pizza. And let's say the price of pizza increases. This is going to cause the demand for burgers to also increase. So when we do percentage change quantity of burgers divided by percentage change price of pizza, we're going to get, we have a positive quantity change. And we have a positive price change because price increased and quantity increased. So we're going to get a positive number here. That's going to tell us that it's a substitute. Or if the price of pizza decreased, we get a shift to the left of our demand curve for burgers. We're going to get a negative number on top for percentage change quantity in burgers and a negative number on the bottom for percentage change in price of pizza. And we're going to see that this also gives us a positive number. So positive number means it's a substitute. Negative number means it's a complement. Greater than 1 means it's elastic. Between 0 and 1 means it's inelastic. Right? And equal to 1 is also still unit elastic. So that whole part is still the same, but now the positive and negative tells us what type of good it is. And then lastly, we have price elasticity of supply. So instead of looking at how elastic our customers are, we're going to be calculating how elastic or how sensitive our suppliers are. We're actually going to do this the same way. So percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. The only difference is instead of being quantity demanded on the top, now it's quantity supplied. So we're looking at a graph. We're looking at that change in quantity on the supply curve and change in price on the supply curve. How is it interpreted? Are very similar. So we're looking at how sensitive suppliers are to changes in prices. And it's a little bit different because on the buyer side, prices go up and you're like, I don't want to buy so much. But on the seller side, prices go up and they're like, I definitely want to sell more. And we're looking at like how responsive they are, how flexible, how quickly can they increase or decrease production to be able to take advantage of that change in price. So how sensitive they are to changes in prices from the production side. So if we're thinking about inelastic supply, something that might be inelastic, we could think of something like Super Bowl tickets or fruit trees. These are things that it's not easy to just make more of. So Super Bowl tickets, you could even, sometimes this could be even considered perfectly inelastic. Because it doesn't matter how much people want to go to a particular game, the stadium has a fixed number of seats. They've already figured out how to maximize the number of seats in there and they can't increase it more. They definitely can't double or triple it. They're sort of stuck. They may be able to move it to a slightly different stadium, but still there are a lot of limits. And then fruit trees, these often take, 3 to 5 or more years to produce fruit. So let's say I'm an apple farmer and all of a sudden prices of apples are really high, meaning the sales price, not the cost to produce it. And while I would love to sell 5 times as many apples when people are paying a lot for them, I can't just grow more apples. I'm already at my max capacity, and if I want to increase my size, it is going to take me several years to get those grown. By the time they grow, prices might have dropped again. Like, I'm not really going to be flexible. At least in the short run, my quantity is fixed regardless of what's going on with the price. And if we're looking at highly elastic supply, we could think of like cups of lemonade or pizza. These are things where it's very easy to make more, double, triple your production in the moment if demand arises. So let's say you have a lemonade stand on the side of the road. You have a lot of customers. You might even sell out real quickly, but you could just be like, hold on, I'm gonna run to the store real quick. I'm gonna go get more cups, go get some more lemons. Like we'll be back in business in just a second. You can very easily increase the quantity you're selling. And if you don't have a lot of customers, you can just save the supplies you have and try again tomorrow. It's not going to necessarily go bad. Pizza is also extremely flexible. Look at Domino's, Pizza Hut, whichever pizza company you like. If you notice on days where there are like football games or Fridays or certain days, they have triple, quadruple, 10 times the amount of pizza sold as they might on just a random Wednesday in the middle of the week. So it's very easy for them to increase the amount of pizza they sell. People call in, they're like, sure, we can make you pizza. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but they're able to meet, that changing quantity. Let's talk about some of the categories of things that determine the elasticity of supply. All of these really have to do with like how quickly can the company change their quantity. Are they going to be able to come up with the inputs or the resources or the things that they need to be able to make more or less or move around to where those higher prices are? So if we're talking about elastic supply, this is where they are sensitive to price changes, meaning they can adapt quickly to meet higher and lower prices. They're able to change that quantity that they can produce fairly quickly. So flexibility of inputs. If you have a lemonade stand, you could use red cups or clear cups. They could use lemons, concentrate. There's lots of different things. They're able to change those inputs really easily and still come out with like the same lemonade. Mobility of inputs. So can you move around what you're selling? And this example here is a pop singer concert. So if they've got a concert, if they have higher demand, they might be able to move to a bigger venue, even in like the same city. They may be able to add an extra date, extra tour date in the middle, move around. What people are paying for is the being able to see that singer, and so they can move that product basically around to meet the customer. The third category is actually fairly similar to the first one, ability to produce substitute inputs. This tends to be more related to companies that produce some of their inputs as well as the final product. So you could think about if you sell short sleeve shirts, but you also make the fabric and turn it into shirts. and there's issues with cotton or something else, you're able to quickly substitute for something else. So I could still make my short sleeve shirts. I'm just going to substitute it with linen or wool or a blend of fabric, something else. And this is very similar to flexibility of inputs. In this case, it's just flexibility of the company that also produces one of their inputs to production. And then time to produce. So if it's something like retail products or pizza, I can produce way more today than I do tomorrow. Even other retail stuff, like maybe it takes a week or several days, but I can increase and decrease however I need to. And then if we're talking about inelastic supply, this is where it's like not flexible. They can't really adapt in the moment. They can make long-term changes if they see that, prices are staying high or there's more demand somewhere else, but they're kind of stuck and they're very slow to adapt. Okay, so they're going to adapt slowly. So an example for flexibility of inputs would be like brain surgery. If you have a whole bunch of people with new tumors, you can't just have a whole lot of extra brain surgeons all of a sudden. They take, 5 years to train, after med school, 10 years. I don't really know too much about brain surgery, which is why you do not want me doing brain surgery on you. I'll keep my doctorate to do something else. But it's going to take decades, right? Specialization and even just facilities. Like, you can't just do brain surgery wherever. So even if we have higher prices, higher demand for brain surgery, can't just increase that quantity produced quickly. Mobility of inputs, think about like a restaurant, brick and mortar restaurant. They're sort of stuck there. They have a physical kitchen that is attached to the ground and the electricity. And if all of a sudden there is a big festival going on in the next city over, they can't just pick up their whole restaurant and move over it. They're sort of stuck to where they are. Now, some restaurants are trying to adapt to this. So they may have added a food truck or a way to do pop-up venues. They're trying to be more flexible so that they can capture that extra revenue when it's available. Ability to produce substitute inputs. So inelastic would be like diamond rings. You can't really maybe like there are some alternatives for like the metals used in the ring, but for diamonds, like you just need the diamond. So if you're out of diamonds or prices are high, you can't just get more diamonds. And then time to produce, so car manufacturing, housing, anything that's going to take months or years to produce. Just because prices are high temporarily, companies aren't going to be able to adapt quickly. It's going to be slow. They may have to wait another year and a half before they can increase production. They have to build another factory, train people. Some of the parts that they need, like the computer chips, they may have to order those 18 months in advance or however long. So inelastic means that they can't adapt quickly. They're going to be slow. They're not flexible. And then elastic means there's a high price or high demand for something, they can quickly increase or decrease that quantity produced. All right, so take a look at this, check out your textbook, do the worksheet, and message me or stop by office hours with questions.